Kentucky may seem like a land of rolling hills, bourbon distilleries, and horse farms, but beneath its quiet surface lies a past that refuses to be explained away. Deep within the limestone caves that crisscross the state, archaeologists have found evidence of cultures that predate written history, mysterious symbols carved into rock walls, tools that don't match any known indigenous tradition, and even human remains that suggest a far older occupation of the region than mainstream history books admit. The Mammoth Cave System, the largest cave network on Earth, has yielded strange artifacts, woven sandals, torches still bearing traces of soot after thousands of years, and burial sites so deep in the darkness that researchers wonder how prehistoric people navigated those miles of tunnels without modern light. Some of the oldest mummies in North America were found there, preserved by the cave's dry earth, and they don't always match the genetic profile of later Native American tribes, sparking debates about who Kentucky's first inhabitants really were. Legends from the Shawnee and Cherokee speak of strange beings who lived underground long before their own people arrived, describing them as a race of moon-eyed inhabitants who avoided sunlight and vanished when the tribes moved in. Early settlers in Kentucky recorded stories of finding bones and massive skulls near burial mounds, some of which were later dismissed as exaggeration, yet newspaper archives from the 1800s still contain reports of giant skeletons unearthed during farming and construction. Were these merely tall individuals, or evidence of an entirely different population that has since been erased from the landscape? Then there are the petroglyphs, strange, intricate carvings found on rock faces across the state. Some appear to mark celestial events, lining up with the solstices and equinoxes when the sun hits at just the right angle. Others seem almost mathematical, depicting spiral patterns, grids, and figures that some researchers believe may encode knowledge of astronomy and geometry. What's most fascinating is that some of these carvings look strikingly similar to those found thousands of miles away, from the American Southwest to Scotland. Is this coincidence, or does it suggest an ancient network of communication or shared culture that spanned continents? Kentucky is also home to one of the largest concentrations of ancient earthworks and mounds east of the Mississippi. The Adena and Hopewell cultures built elaborate ceremonial centers, some shaped like serpents, birds, or other animals visible only from above. The Great Serpent Mound, though technically located in Ohio, has ties to Kentucky sites and lines up with lunar cycles in ways modern astronomy has confirmed only recently. How did these early cultures develop such precise knowledge of the heavens? And why invest so much effort into massive earthworks whose purpose we still can't fully decode? Even in more recent history, Kentucky has been a magnet for strange phenomena, UFO sightings, vanishing towns, and unexplained disappearances in the remote hills. Some researchers connect these modern mysteries with the state's ancient past, suggesting that whatever secrets lie beneath Kentucky's soil might still be active, influencing the present. The sheer number of caves, sinkholes, and underground rivers makes the region one of the most geologically unique in North America. And it's easy to imagine entire chapters of history hidden in passages no human has yet explored. Asterisk researchers who have ventured into Kentucky's most remote sites often report an uncanny feeling, as if the past is still alive there. In the deepest sections of Mammoth Cave, explorers have discovered charred cane torches left behind thousands of years ago, perfectly preserved footprints, and entire chambers that look like they were deliberately used for ceremonies. One chamber even contains a vast pile of rocks, carefully stacked by human hands, serving no obvious practical purpose. Some archaeologists believe these may have been ritual offerings or markers for the dead. When they carbon dated the remains of torches and woven sandals, they were shocked as some were more than 4,000 years old. Older than the Egyptian pyramids, Kentucky's burial mounds add another layer of mystery. Farmers in the 19th century frequently reported unearthing enormous skeletons while plowing their fields. Some skeletons were said to measure over 7 feet tall, with unusually large skulls. While many of these finds were quickly lost or reburied, a few accounts describe the bones being sent to local museums or private collectors. This fed legends of an ancient race of giants that predated the Native Americans. Modern archaeologists tend to dismiss these reports, but the sheer number of documented newspaper articles from the 1800s makes them difficult to ignore completely. Were these just exaggerated frontier stories, or evidence of a now extinct group whose existence was quietly forgotten? Another puzzle is the so-called Moon-eyed people. Cherokee oral tradition describes them as pale-skinned, blue-eyed, and unable to see well in daylight. According to legend, they were driven out or exterminated when the Cherokee arrived in the region. Strangely, European settlers in the 1700s also wrote about encountering small, light-skinned people living in the hills, describing them as shy, nocturnal, and skilled at hiding. Were these stories simply myths created to explain ancient ruins, or did a real population vanish from Kentucky before recorded history? The rock art scattered across the state deepens the mystery. In Carter County, petroglyphs show spiral shapes that line up with the sun during equinoxes, suggesting that their creators tracked the movement of the heavens with scientific accuracy. Some symbols appear to depict constellations as they appeared thousands of years ago, indicating a long tradition of skywatching. Certain carvings even seem to portray animals that should not have existed in Kentucky at the time, including what some claim look like mammoths or mastodons. If true, that would push the creation of the carvings back to the Ice Age, when humans and these giant creatures coexisted. Another baffling element is the widespread network of ancient stone structures and walls in Kentucky's forests. Some are dismissed as colonial fences, but others are built with a precision and scale that seems excessive for simple livestock enclosures. A few are aligned with cardinal directions or local landmarks in ways that hint at a ceremonial or astronomical purpose. Without written records, their function remains speculative. Fortifications, temples, or something we haven't yet imagined. The state's geology itself plays a role in the mystery. Kentucky sits on a vast limestone bed riddled with caves, sinkholes, and underground rivers. Some researchers speculate that ancient cultures might have used these subterranean routes to travel or conduct rituals. Modern spelunkers occasionally find ancient torch marks on cave ceilings miles from the nearest entrance, evidence that prehistoric people penetrated the darkness far beyond what was necessary for shelter. How did they navigate such treacherous terrain without getting lost? Were these journeys spiritual in nature, perhaps an initiation rite, or a way to connect with what they believed were underworld spirits? Even today, locals report strange lights, eerie sounds, and sightings of shadowy figures near some of these ancient sites. Paranormal investigators argue that the area's high levels of quartz and running water could amplify electromagnetic energy, perhaps explaining both the legends of spirits and the strange feelings visitors often experience. Whether one believes in the supernatural or not, it's hard to deny that Kentucky's ancient past seems unusually alive, refusing to be just a relic on a museum shelf. Some researchers believe that Kentucky's ancient earthworks are not isolated phenomena but part of a much larger pattern stretching across the continent. When you map them, the mounds and stone circles seem to form geometric alignments that echo the layouts of sites like Stonehenge or the pyramids of Central America. The Great Serpent Mound, connected to Adonai and Hopewell cultures, aligns with lunar standstills, a cycle that repeats every 18.6 years. Such knowledge requires generations of careful observation. Were these early people simply brilliant astronomers, or were they inheriting knowledge passed down from an even older culture that once spanned the Americas? Some alternative historians suggest that Kentucky might have been a hub of this lost knowledge. They point to similarities between petroglyphs in Kentucky and those found in Ireland, Scotland, and even parts of Africa, raising the possibility of ancient transoceanic contact. While mainstream archaeology is cautious about such theories, the parallels are undeniable. Identical spiral motifs, solar calendars carved into rock, and animal figures matching constellations known worldwide. How could separate, supposedly isolated groups develop nearly identical systems of measurement and celestial tracking unless there was some form of contact or shared origin story? Modern technology is beginning to reveal what lies beneath Kentucky's soil. Ground-penetrating radar has found entire networks of buried structures near known mound sites, suggesting these were not just isolated ceremonial spots but parts of vast, planned communities. Some of these settlements may have been larger and more complex than we ever imagined, with streets, plazas, and designated sacred areas, and North American equivalent of ancient cities. The problem is that many of these sites are on private land or have been destroyed by agriculture and development, making it a race against time to preserve what's left before it disappears forever. Kentucky also has its share of strange artifacts that defy easy categorization. In the late 1800s, miners reportedly found copper tools and even inscribed tablets deep within cave systems, far below where they should have been if they belonged to recent cultures. Mainstream scholars often write these off as hoaxes, but there are too many independent accounts to ignore. Could these discoveries hint at an advanced culture that existed long before the Native American civilizations we know, a culture that perhaps disappeared after a cataclysmic event? Some scientists are even looking at Kentucky's cave systems as potential repositories of undiscovered fossils and artifacts that could rewrite the human timeline in North America. The dry, stable conditions deep underground could easily preserve organic material for tens of thousands of years. What might still lie hidden in passages no one has ever mapped? Entire sections of Mammoth Cave are still unexplored, and it's not hard to imagine that new discoveries could emerge that challenge everything we think we know about early human migration. Then there are the local legends, the stories of secret tunnels under old towns, of strange glowing creatures sighted near cave entrances, of chanting heard deep underground where no human should be. Folklore blends with history, but that's often where clues hide. Many of today's archaeological sites were first identified because of local stories passed down for generations. It makes you wonder how many tall tales are actually rooted in memories of real events, passed through centuries of retelling until they became myth. Ultimately, Kentucky's enigmas remind us that history is not as fixed as we think. For every textbook certainty, there are dozens of unanswered questions. Who were the first people to call Kentucky home? What drove them to build vast earthworks, carve mysterious symbols, and explore miles of dark caves with nothing but cane torches? Why do so many of their traces connect to patterns and myths found on distant continents? Perhaps the greatest mystery is not what we've already discovered, but what still lies beneath the hills, waiting to be found. The deeper you dig, the stranger Kentucky becomes. And maybe that's the real secret. The past isn't just behind us, it's still there, humming beneath our feet, asking us to keep looking. The next discovery could come tomorrow, and when it does, it might not just change what we know about Kentucky, it might change what we know about the entire story of human civilization.